What's up, everyone? Aaron Schatz here, Editor-in-Chief of ASE Publishing, and today we have another review for you. Yep, we have another review for you. This time, it's the D-Link DIR-2660. It is an EXO router, AC2600 smart Wi-Fi mesh. This guy right here with all these antennas. This is review ID 63682. You can check out this and all the reviews by going to www.aselabs.com. I say this all the time. I'm going to save you the trouble because you are watching this on YouTube right now and there's a subscribe button right down there. You hit that, be informed of all the content as we post them. If you don't have time to watch these reviews, you can check out our 1-minute reviews. I know that I say this all the time, but we're going to have more content flowing, so please do subscribe to the channel and you'll be informed of everything as we post them. But this is a review. We've got the router and we've got an extender, the mesh of the actual group here. Let's see what's in store. To start, these two products are actually separate. You don't actually buy these as a kit. The reason this is called a smart mesh is because you can actually start with this and add nodes as you need. So this and this are actually separate products. This guy right here is the DAP1820. This thing works. It's in the EXO line. So this thing will actually connect to this thing and make a mesh network out of it. Most of the mesh kits that you would see these days have like 3 base stations or 2 base stations and they come as a pack. This one you can actually just start with the router and expand as necessary. I like that because this router, most of the time, like the newer Wi-Fi's like AC and actually Wi-Fi 6 will cover most houses just fine. This one would probably cover my house just fine, but it's nice to have an extender on the top floor just to make sure it's got that little extra boost that's needed. Let's take a look around the router itself. So it's reminiscent of an older generation of routers. If I had a comparison to show you, a lot of newer routers these days that are basically built for Wi-Fi only are very small. They don't have a lot of ports in the back. Thankfully, this guy has a 4-port switch on the back. So you have the WAN port, the internet port, and then 4-port switch on the back. A lot of the other routers that I've seen these days basically have just like, 2 ports, one for internet and one for the device right next to it. I still have things that are really close to my router, so having this 4-port switch is actually very, very useful. These ports are gigabit, which is funny because the wireless on this is actually faster than gigabit. So it's really interesting when you have the wired be somewhat slower than the wireless. Obviously, I prefer wired just because latency issues, packet loss, what have you, and such. Wireless is really good these days. Generally, you're not going to notice any difference, but still, anytime that I would wire something, I am able to wire something, I will wire something. It's interesting that there's not like 2.5 gig or 5 gig. I understand that 10 gig is pretty expensive still, but there are other standards that are around analogous to the actual wireless in here that could have been done. Problem is, the devices actually don't support that. I believe my computer supports 2.5 gig, but there's not a lot of things in the market. Remember, like when Ethernet was made, it was gigabit and then it went to 10 gigabit, and 10 gigabit has completely different cabling. It was very expensive, and it's only recently, within the past like few years, that 2.5 gig E and 5 gig E came out to actually lessen those requirements. So the market's going to slowly trickle in to actually get that in there. So unfortunately, we're still stuck with a lot of gigabit. Also on the back, you see a USB 2.0 port. This is for plugging in a USB flash drive or hard drive or whatever. You can actually share this. This basically turns it into a network-attached storage device. Simple sharing, just like a Samba share or an FTP or whatever. The front of it actually has a USB 3.0 port on it, so you can actually share 2 things at once. Port in the back again is USB 2.0 only. If you're actually looking to do some light sharing, this works fine. I'll show you, that you can just set this up and set whatever up. Honestly, if you need to do like real sharing stuff, just buy a NAS. They're fantastic. They're cheap. They're inexpensive. Would this serve you in a pinch? Yes. Would I recommend it to do file sharing? No. Like, it's a router. Treat it as a router first. One of the interesting things about most new routers is the amount of antennas on the router because they are MIMO, multiple in, multiple out, and they do that by having all these crazy antennas everywhere. The speeds you get are AC2600, which means the maximum, combining channels of about 2.6 gigabits per second. Very, very fast. Obviously, it's faster than the wired on here too. So I have gigabit internet. I have Fios gigabit. The wireless is faster than this, so you're not going to have really a tough time. And this router can actually handle gigabit service. So I had another router, ostensibly from D-Link 2, it was a little bit older. It was a mesh one, and it actually couldn't saturate the bandwidth of the FiOS gigabit internet. So thankfully, something like this, that's a higher end product, can actually saturate the bandwidth for your internet. And that's really important, because what's the point of having gigabit internet if you are not unable to use it because of the router? We'll cover that stuff later. When we go on the computer, I'll show you the interface, I'll show you a speed test, and show you exactly what I mean. Taking a look again at the top of the unit, you have status LEDs up here, which can actually be turned off if you want. But why? It's a router. Leave them on. It's great. On the bottom, you have a QR code for setup. Routers these days are really easy to set up with a smartphone. I suggest doing it. You could still do the whole turn this on, plug something into here, and then set an IP address statically and then do that whole setup. That still functions just fine. But honestly, through the phone is super easy. You can also connect to the wireless and do it that way. But honestly, connect with your phone, set it up. It's super easy, just works fine. Going back to the back, you have the reset button. Every router needs a reset button. WPS button. Disregard, because I never found it to be useful, never really quite worked for me, but hey, if you like it, go for it. I don't suggest using it because why not? I mean, you got passwords for a reason, right? This can also set up a guest network, so if you don't want to share your password for your internal network, you can have a guest one to do that too. You also have a physical power button. Goes on and off. And the AC adapter cord right here. Not cord, plug. That about rounds out this guy. Oh, on the bottom you can also mount this to a wall. So there's two holes right here that slide in. You can mount this to a wall. But that's it for that. In the box you also get an Ethernet cable. So that's good. You also get the AC adapter for that. Also needed. Now let's check out the DAP1820. So this is an extender, and it's really simple. It's a single Ethernet port, and it plugs in directly to an outlet. It's interesting because a mesh network doesn't actually require a wired backhaul to work. Wireless mesh technology is pretty much what's going on. If you had a wired network in the house like I do, you can actually plug this in and it'll actually work as a wired backhaul connection. But if you don't, you can just unplug it and they'll wirelessly sync, and they'll use basically one of the channels to actually do the synchronization, and then it'll basically extend the network to be much longer. So if you had this on the second floor like I do, you have this in the basement, it should blanket your whole house no problem. In fact, this might actually cover your whole house just because of the good technology in here. I said it was you plug this directly into an outlet, and that's good for some people. I think that it would be better if it could have been a standalone unit. It had two Ethernet ports, because I do like to have a wired backhaul and then maybe another one coming out to a device or a switch or something. And the fact that this has to be plugged into an outlet kind of defeats a little bit of the utility of it. But for most people, this will work just fine. Initially, when you set this up, make sure that you set it up when you're right near this guy. So when you're actually setting this up, set up this one at the same time, and they have to be in the same physical space, because you're actually going to plug this in to this directly by Ethernet. That Ethernet setup is a one-time thing, and there is an Ethernet cable in here, so you can actually plug this into there without buying something separately. So in the box there's an Ethernet cable you can use. You'll never need it again if you just want to share everything wirelessly. It works just fine. The setup for this is also really easy with your cell phone. So QR code in the back, scan it, use the D-Link setup application, and it really is a breeze to set this up. I didn't really encounter problems at all, and I've reset this a ton of times. I'm not going to go through the setup with you, partly because I have my whole network set up, and doing that would be a real pain for me to do. But you can trust me when I say that I've done this a couple times, and setup has been a breeze. It's really easy. The only thing that I had a hiccup on was when I actually initially set this up. I plugged this into the place where I actually wanted to put this, and then the setup's like, oh no, you have to actually put this down where this is and plug it in by Ethernet first. Then you can move it. I was like, oh, well, too bad I didn't know that. I had to walk a couple flights of stairs. It's no big deal. Just know that when you set this up, make them really close to each other before you actually have the final setup. I will say this about mesh networks in general, or AC networks, Wi-Fi 6. The range is really good. It's really going to be If you have a really large house, sure, mesh networks are probably going to be like something that you'd probably be interested in. For most houses these days, I mean, I have a basement, I have a first floor and a second floor. This thing alone easily reaches the second floor, and it actually extends outside a lot. The MIMO technology of new routers is really great for signal penetration. If you do need a mesh network, this is the kind of thing that you can extend. So if you're not sure, you can be like, okay, I'll just buy this new router because the router is good in general. And then if I need it, I'll get some extenders and I'll be good to go. Like most mesh networks, the EXO system supports 3 wireless base stations. This is one of them, and you can get 2 satellites. So most of the mesh networks, you can start out with like 1, 2, and then go up to 3. This is basically the same thing. I suggest starting with something like this. Just get the router. It's a great router on its own, and really expand it if you need to. If you need to make a mesh network, just buy these extenders, and then you can just extend the wireless portion of this. The good part about this kind of router is because there's so many antennas, the likelihood that you're going to get signal gaps in your house in like certain places is minimized. Because basically, the reason that these antennas are in different positions is because when signals are bouncing all over the place, it's unlikely that you're going to get some gap in that signal. That's because of the positioning of all these antennas, and because they're slightly different. If it was one antenna, yeah, you might get some signal loss just in the house, just based on propagation. With all these antennas, you're highly unlikely to actually get that. I said it before, but personally, this alone covered my entire house. Signal strength was great the entire time. When I plugged this in, it was basically more of the same. It blanketed my whole house with Wi-Fi, no problems, except, I will say this, my Pixelbook, for some reason, disconnects from wireless networks. I originally thought it was the actual router, but it's not. It was happening on other networks too. So there's something going on with my Pixelbook. It's not this thing's fault, because I have my other devices here that are all wireless that work just fine. So if you have a Pixelbook and you're getting disconnects, I would love to hear if that's happening to you too, because I'm very shocked. I think I'm going to have to do a power wash or whatever they call it to cleanly restore that thing. But otherwise, my cell phone connecting, all the wireless things I have in my house, I have about like, I have smart home things in here that are taking a lot of stuff. I noticed no hiccups in there. I had an older router that was actually choking on a lot of the wireless. This thing handles that no problem. That was really important to me. When you're talking and you have a lot of wireless devices, you need something that's fast and it's capable of handling all those connections at once. This thing is handling that just fine. Another feature that the 2660 supports is assistant integration with like Alexa and Google Home. You could say something like, hey Google, turn on my guest Wi-Fi. And what is guest Wi-Fi? I am glad you asked, because we are going to show you that soon. In fact, we're going to do that in a little bit, so why don't we hold on that and I'll show you that in a little bit. In terms of performance, I've not seen any real downtimes. In fact, I'm going to show you when we go on, and I'll show you on the computer over here, and I'll screen share. Basically, this thing has been up for 90 plus days right now. It's been rock solid. And I've been hammering it with speed tests, wireless tests, and really it's handled everything I've thrown at it. I get the occasional glitches with my Pixelbook, but that's just the Pixelbook's fault. That's not the router's fault. My phone works just fine. All my Google Home stuff works just fine. All the Chromecasting I'm doing, everything, this thing just handles everything with ease, and that's what I would expect with a newer router. What we should do right now is we should reset. Let's reset. I'm going to go over to my computer, and I'm going to show you the interface of the DIR-2660. So let's go do that right now. We have reset, and now we're actually looking at the admin login screen for the DIR-2660, the EXO router. So let's log in right now. You just put in your password, which is actually hidden, which is good. And no, I do not want to save. Go away. And you are taken to the home screen of the router itself. And as you can see, everything is already set up now. I can tell you that the setup for this was easy. I mentioned this earlier in the review as well. One thing you do have to note when you do the extender, make sure you set it up right near the router first. Then you can move it to wherever you want to be. So that's something to be aware of. Right now, I have 16 clients connected. There's nothing attached to USB. and that works fine, but honestly I have a NAS and there's no reason to use this as, you know, a quasi NAS. You could see that my uptime is really good, so I'm making sure to do this before I unplug it to show you the rest of the review. So I'm doing this out of order, so if you're going to try to hack me, please don't, and my IP address will change anyway, so nothing to worry about that. But yeah, this thing has been solid for a good 95 days, and really is a testament to how good routers have come these days. I actually tested an older D-Link router, and it frankly wasn't as good. It crashed a lot and stuff, and now, you know, with something like this is very stable. Even, you know, major improvements in uptime and stuff. Like 95 days is really good. Generally, most people tend to reset their routers every 7 days or so, just because things just happen. But there you go, 95 days, pretty damn good. So if we actually look at the clients connected, you could see them all here. It gives you an example of like the IP address. You know, if it detects something like this is my computer right here, I can actually reserve the IP from this screen itself. So if I wanted to reserve this IP address, I could do that. This takes into the what's it called? The DNS, not the DNS, the DHCP. So basically, if I was actually going to set this up, I don't have to actually set up a static IP address for this. I can actually just say, oh yeah, reserve this specific address, and it'll hand it out over DHCP, and it's great. So I don't have to worry about setting anything up and setting the IP address statically. It'll basically, when this computer requests an address for DHCP, it will just get the same address, and that's great. That's what I used to do all the time when I actually did save my IP addresses for servers and stuff that I was hosting, like game servers and stuff. Very helpful to do it this way. So moving on to, let's see if I want to show you anything else on the screen. Okay, I'm going to show you the extender real quick. You can see that the quality is excellent. So I have the extender right now 2 floors up. So the router's in my basement, and the extender is on the 2nd floor of the house. So it's going through 2 floors. You can see the quality is still excellent. And you could change the name if you want. It was fine. I didn't really care. You can reboot it from here. You can remove it, but I'm not going to do that. So let's check out what this is as well. You could see that another picture showing the actual mesh network being set up by the router and then the extender itself. Go back to here. So let's see the internet stuff. Showed you that already. I didn't show you this. This is the actual status for the router itself. And here's something that I'm going to hopefully remember to blur out. The password is actually in the clear text. So I'm hopefully blurring this out so you don't see this, but the password for the Wi-Fi is in clear text. I remember complaining about this a few times to D-Link in their applications and such. And I think it's fine to, you know, put stuff in clear text. You know, again, I understand this is an administrative interface and such, but still, you can have people walking behind me if I'm setting stuff up. They can glance at this password. I think it's, you know, I think it's really bad that it's in clear text, and that should be changed. So hopefully you don't see this and it is blurred out. So the other things you can do is you can go right to settings for this stuff, but we're going to go up here and actually go into settings. We scroll over settings. You can go to the wizard to set this up initially. So it's basically the initial step-by-step process, but honestly, I would do this through your phone. It's super simple to do this through your phone. So I don't want it to do this right now. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. It's going to reset everything, I think. Reset everything. That's okay. There it goes. Well, my uptime is now reset, so good thing I captured that before. But anyway, let's go to internet and I can show you all the information here. So you have regular internet connection, DHCP. You can see it in advanced settings. It's pretty much all standard internet, you know, router stuff here. If you had IPv6, that would be also done. Fios still does not support IPv6, at least for mine connection. So yeah, still not there for IPv6. But if you have it, this does support it too. You can also set up VLANs, which I don't need to do, but if you do, you have that support right here. So if you need to, it is there for you. Let's go into the wireless settings. Yes, I would like to abandon it right now. Now, here again, I'm going to show you a page that has the password in the plain text. Again, I think this is a problem that needs to be rectified. I would rather not show passwords in plain text. If I want to see a plain text,
usually they have a little icon here to actually show the actual password in plain text. Otherwise, it should be hidden. So hopefully, I am blurring this out right now. Otherwise, you get Wi-Fi protected setup. I usually disable that all the time. I suggest you do the same. It's really not that good. You should always, you know, I don't like using it. It never really works well for me. But yeah, so I'm gonna just hit save. And now it's going to reset, and we're going to reconnect to the router. So give it a little bit. This is one of the things when you're actually doing a review in quote-unquote real time. I like to show how long things actually take when you actually do manipulations of the device in real time. I actually think that it doesn't take this long. It's just waiting just in case the router does have a hiccup or something, because it should just, like, I bet you it's good to go immediately. That's okay. So again, hopefully I'm not showing you this, and let's go to the guest zone. So if I usually have a guest zone set up, but for this time, since I just set this router up again, you know, I turned everything off. So if you wanted to create a guest zone, you could basically, a guest zone is really good. So if you have a lot of people over, or even if you don't have a lot of people over, you just have random people over, you can create a separate wireless network, and it'll segregate it from your normal network. And you can also say, like, oh, I only want to give this internet access only. You can disable or enable that. So if you had a guest network, I suggest you say internet access only, because what's the point of having a guest network if they're not going to be segregated? So if you want to use a guest network, I highly encourage you to do this, especially for people or devices that you do not trust, because this will segregate that traffic to only be able to go to the internet, and it will not touch your internal network. So I will disable that for now. And it's going to complain that I'm leaving the page again. Yes, I want to abandon. So this is the general setup. This is the actual address that was set up originally, 192.168.0.1. It is a Class C address, and you can see that it assigns a local address to it for DNS. And everything is pretty standard here. I wouldn't touch this. So if we go to advanced, you could change the DHCP range if you want, the lease time, and some of the other advanced settings. Most of the people here are probably not going to need to touch any of this. If you need these settings, they are here for you to manipulate. Otherwise, just leave them as is. If you need to disable DHCP, you can do so for that. I don't suggest doing that because this should be your primary router. Now, let's go to USB sharing. I don't have anything plugged in, but if I did, this basically acts as a NAS. You basically plug in the USB drive. It could be a hard drive, it could be a regular flash drive, and this will share it just as it would a NAS would. So, and then you can actually add users in here as much as you need to. So, no problem there. Again, I highly encourage you to use an actual NAS instead of something like this, but this gets the job done if you just need to share something across the network. A simple flash drive, plug it in, just enable sharing, and boom, you're good to go. So the cloud features I have not really used because I don't want to actually connect my router to anything on the cloud because I just don't trust it. But again, like this thing supports, you know, McAfee scanning. I think you get 5 years for free and such like that. Again, like I have a trust issue for stuff like this, but you know, it's there if you need it. I know this is you know, it's weird for me to say this considering it's a review, but if it's something I wouldn't do, I'm not going to even say you should do it. So I don't like to actually connect my home devices to really anything in the cloud. I mean, I say that, and I have a Google Home and, you know, Google Assistant everywhere, but I just have a problem doing where the internet, the router itself is doing it for some reason. So maybe I'll get over that eventually, but probably not. So let's move on to features now. Here's features. Let's go to the quality of service engine. So we can do an internet speed checkup. Why don't we do that right now? And it's going to be by speedtest.net. So let's check the internet speed. And I'm going to show you the actual speed test results in a second. So right now, due to the coronavirus and due to all the other craziness that's happening in the world, the internet speed is a little bit slower than I've seen, probably because every single person is just using the internet non-stop these days, which is totally fine. So let's see what this comes back with right now. So I believe what this is doing is it's actually going to speed test and actually doing a speed test, and it's just hiding the little interface, and it's going to come back and actually show you the results. So wait a little bit and we'll see what these results are. But I'll show you. So you could see that, you know, download. I mean, look at the upload. We're nearly pegging the upload. Download's okay. We can apply this to the quality service, and what does that mean? That means that it will try to reserve that bandwidth. So, for instance, if I have a single stream, I can actually do, so if I set this to on, like, or manage by device, I can actually apply this to limit the streams per each device. So if my bandwidth is let's just say that I have gigabit service, but let's just say for argument's sake that I have 200 megabit service up and down. So what I would want to do is I don't want any device really going like too close to it because it'll saturate the bandwidth. So I would say something like I would put 150 and 150. So no one device can saturate the entire pipes. And that's actually very useful. For me, for gigabit, I really don't have a reason to do this. But if you're limited in your bandwidth, like I understand gigabit is still a limitation, but it's not going to be realistic. So if you have like 50 megabit limit, you could set this to something like 40. So any individual device won't be able to just saturate the entire thing. And the upload is actually very important. Let's just say you have a smaller upload. Let's just say you have a 50 meg download and a 5 meg upload. You want to make sure you set your upload speed to something like 3. Because once your uploads get saturated, it doesn't matter your download, because most of the time, internet uses TCP. And if you don't have an upload channel, it's going to be bottlenecked on that as well. So make sure you actually set this to be quite a bit lower than your maximum speeds. So that's actually very, very cool if you need this. I don't, so I'm going to turn that off. And it'll show you the things that are connected, and then you can actually put those things in the quality of service priority levels. So for instance, if I had my computer, I could just drag it into the highest because I actually don't want to be as limited as anything else. If I had something like, you know, something that wasn't as important, I would drag it into there. So if you're a gamer, for instance, I would drag, you know, anything that you're doing for gaming into the high and the highest ones. Everything else you can put into, you know, medium and such. And that's it. So we can, I didn't do anything here, so I'll just go off of it. Firewall. So this is very standard, very generic. We can, you know, I suggest doing, if you don't need a DMZ, don't do it. It's better to port forward rather than just saying everything goes to a single IP address. So that's what a DMZ is. So you DMZ basically says if the router doesn't have an entry to actually go, like the actual outbound request, that it doesn't match to something that would, okay, let me restart this, my train of thought again. The DMZ works by saying that anything that the router cannot identify where it came from internally, it will just send to a specific IP address on the internal network. So routers work with port address translation. Everybody calls it NAT address, but it's actually really technically port address. So my client, my computer that's on the network, will make an internet request. Let's just say that it's going to go to aselabs.com, right? It's going to connect to ASE Labs over a specific port. The router will hold that port saying, okay, I know that the port that this was asked for is XYZ. So when the response comes in over that same port, it says, okay, you know, my computer asked for that. I will route it to my computer and everything works fine. If a random thing on the internet came and started just pinging my router's IP address, the router's like, wait, I don't have anything that corresponds to this, so I'm just going to drop it. I'm not going to do anything with it. If you enable DMZ, it says, okay, anything that I don't know what to do with, I'm just going to pass to the DMZ on the internal network. So if you don't need to do this, I don't suggest enabling this. Obviously, you can enable stateful packet inspection for IPv4. It's a good firewall feature. You can enable all this stuff. There's no reason not to, unless it causes some issues. And this is the problem with a lot of firewalls. You might enable all these, and then all of a sudden, you might be like, huh, something doesn't work. And then you might have to figure out why something doesn't work. So just be mindful when you're enabling all this. But honestly, if you go into firewall and you enable all this, you should be fine. So let's hit save. Okay. Oh no, I think the router's actually, let me see if the router is, no, it's going. Okay, it's probably, watch, the firewall's now blocking it. That would be awesome. Give me 1 second. Yep. Okay, so what is going on here is that because we just enabled the firewall, the session basically wasn't actually in the firewall. Basically the firewall is saying, wait, I don't recognize this session. So you're gonna have to, so just a simple refresh of the page will actually bring you back. So let's go back into the firewall, and I want to show you the advanced settings. So if you need to worry about all this stuff, I would, you have that option, but honestly, don't touch this. This is stuff very specific. So we can go into rules. So if I wanted to add a rule, I could say, this is basically like if you're familiar with IP tables, this is something similar to that. These are very advanced things that I wouldn't worry about as a consumer. So I wouldn't touch any of the stuff beyond just like enabling some traditional firewall stuff. Really, this is stuff that gets dangerous because you might not know that you've done something that's causing a problem, and now it's a tough time to actually diagnose what the problem is. So if you are going to host an internet server on your internal network, port forwarding is the way to go. What is port forwarding? It basically says anything that comes inbound from the internet on a specific port, just forward to a computer. So for instance, if I had something that if I was going to host something like a Minecraft server, it'd be like, oh, I'm going to Minecraft. I don't remember what the actual port is, but let's just say that it's UDP 12345, right? And then I'll say like the IP address is 192.168.0.15, and then you hit apply. Basically, it says anytime that a connection comes to port 12345 over UDP, forward it to this IP address internally, and that's it. And that's how easy it is to set up an internet server from the internal network. Let's show you the virtual servers. So this is very similar. So basically, this is a port trigger, if you're familiar with that. It says that if you get a trigger on this, enable other things to happen too. So it's very similar. This is an advanced thing. Generally, you only need to port forward, not really trigger anything. But yeah, it's there if you need it. Static routes. This is let me see if I can explain this away. You know what? I'm going to just say that if you need this, you know what this is. If you don't know what this is, don't worry about it. This is something that's pretty advanced functionality for networks, and generally don't worry about it. Dynamic DNS. Dynamic DNS allows you to put a name to your internal network. So for instance, D-Link has their own. So you can actually set this up saying like, oh, I want to set this all up and add a record and then say like blah 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 blah. So I could say like you have to set this up on the service, but you could say like this, and it has Dyne DNS. You have manual as well. So if you're going to do this, you would set up your host name, username, and password. So you have to go to this website and actually set all this stuff up. But once you do that, you set this up, and then actually you'll be able to ping this address from the outside to inside. So you don't have to worry about remembering your IP address. But as you saw, like my IP address didn't really change for a very long time. But it doesn't matter. Like it's very important to have dynamic DNS too. I generally use Dyne DNS for this stuff too, and there's other DNS services you can use too. You can also do this from your computer. You don't have to do it from your router, but it's there. I'll show you. Manual is interesting as well. A lot of this stuff is for more advanced people. Most people, you're not even going to use any of these features. I'm just showing that they exist. VPN is interesting. So you can actually set up a basic VPN, set up your users in here as well, and you can connect to it, and it'll basically flow through your internet connection on your own. So if you set up a VPN, for instance, on, let's say you had an Android device, you connect to your router, for VPN, you're basically saying you're tunneling through the entire internet, tunneling through the router, and then using your internet at your house to actually go out. So what is a VPN good for? Let's just say that you're taking a trip to Europe or something, and you say like, oh, I want to watch Netflix. Well, the easiest way to do that is to just VPN to somewhere in America. And if you enable this, you can do that because your IP address basically turns into the IP address of your router for the internet. And that's the easiest way to do that. So it's actually really interesting and useful. Think of it this way too, that if you're on an unsecured network outside, you can actually enable VPN access on your router, and actually tunnel, create a secure connection, then everything goes over. And then that insecure connection actually turns into a secure connection through the tunnel that you're actually doing this. So very useful stuff. And then some advanced functionality that you probably don't even need to worry about. Let's go into the management now. Hover over the management. Let's go to time and schedule. I'm going to abandon it. Obviously, it's America, New York. We are height of coronavirusville. And I have NTP, network, the network time. I use D-Link's own NTP server for that. Schedule. So what does schedule do? It basically says this is only the times that I'm allowing internet access. But I don't want to schedule. So I'm going to not worry about that. System log, these are all very advanced features that you don't really have to worry about. But if you had a syslog server, you can send it to that. You can email certain things from happening. You can download the system log, which I have done, and it's kind of ridiculous, so I wouldn't even worry about it too much. So let's just see something. So here's the interesting part about this. Notice that the admin password is also, it's blanked out. It is not visible. That's the way every password should be. You can also turn the LEDs off too. But why would you do that? You could save the configuration to the hard drive. You can upload it and restore that. You could reboot the device. You can auto reboot it, daily and weekly at a certain schedule. Again, I have not had a problem with this. I don't really think you need to worry about rebooting the device. If the internet, has a problem, it's simple just to, unplug the router and replug it back in. So this is users for VPN, for the USB sharing and such like that. Same thing. So all those user pages actually come to here. If you wanted to upgrade, you can. Pretty much I set everything up to do it automatically, which I suggest you doing as well. But if you want to manually just check for new firmware and do it that way, or you can actually upgrade it manually by downloading it from D-Link's website. All those are options for you. I suggest making sure that your router is automatically updated because there's important things that get fixed in a lot of these. Also, it actually increases the amount of features in it sometimes too. So let's look at the statistics right now. So not a lot of stuff going on right here. Actually, we're getting a little bit of spikes too. But yeah, and let's see the extender. So a little bit of just, some nice fancy graphs and stuff. This allows you to actually diagnose any problems that are going on your network. And you can see what's going on here. And that's pretty much it for here. Oh, I got signed out. So yeah, let's reset and we'll finish up this review. I wanted to show you the speed test from the actual speedtest.net site. So I have the thing up here. Let's try this again. 1, 3, 2, 1. I'm actually at speedtest.net and I wanted to show you the speed tests in real time. So I've got everything set up. Let's just hit go. Yep, there we go. So the other thing I want to show you is if we switch this is pretty good as it is. But I believe that there's another location that we can get that's even better than this. So basically I'm showing you that the router is not going to be a bottleneck. Obviously the wireless portion is even faster than this anyway. So if you're using this wirelessly and you have AC wireless, it's going to be totally fine. So let's just try if we can do a different server. So let's try Piscataway and see what happens. Yep. Yep. So there are times, not on the weekends, not when it's necessarily peak, not when coronavirus is going nuts, that this actually hit, 900 plus megabits per second. I mean, look at the upload that I'm getting right now. And this is pretty analogous to what I would expect for gigabit. And it really just shows that this router is able to handle that speed just fine. That's the important thing here that I'm trying to show with the speed test.
So that was a look over the interface of the DIR-2660. You could actually set this entire thing up not using your cell phone if you do the old style, connect it wirelessly, set your IP address, and then get the actual router's IP address, log in through the browser, and then do that whole rigmarole. But why bother? You got cell phone, it's easy set up that way, so that's what I suggest doing. You can also look at the statistics on your cell phone as well. Again, it's the same thing I showed you as the actual online version of it on the browser. So if you have a computer, just do it that way. If you're mobile only, you can use the D-Link application to do just the same. The mobile application supports pretty much everything except some really advanced features that the admin interface with the browser supports. So if you need to do things like, enable guest networks and stuff, you can do all of that stuff through the actual mobile application. So if you're not as tech savvy, mobile application pretty much covers you, no problem. The DIR-2660 costs about $170 right now. I just checked on Amazon. The DAP-1820 costs about $100 right now. And yeah, let's take a step back. It is pretty expensive. But this is targeting the prosumer of the market, right? Gamers, stuff like that. Things that need lots of fast internet access. Now you can get a cheaper router that probably won't saturate your internet bandwidth if you have gigabit service like I do, but why would you want that? You want something that you're purchasing a service, right? Service costs money. Why would you buy a router that can't handle that service? That defeats the purpose. I had a router that was maxing out at 300 megabits per second on a gigabit connection. Totally unacceptable. Upgrade to something like this. It's comparably priced in the market. It works. I've thrown so much wireless stuff at it. The mesh works just fine. There's really nothing more to say. It's a worthwhile purchase. Am I going to tell you to run out and buy this if you have a working router right now that serves all the functionality you need? No. If your router works just fine, so be it. Just keep your router. If you're looking to upgrade a router, this is something to really check out. You can expand your network when needed. And most of those mesh networks kits that you see are like $300. So you can get something very comparable for cheaper than that. I know you see a lot of sales on those things for like $250, $200, but honestly, those little mesh networks with those little puck things that they have don't have the same capacity for performance as something like this is going to have. And that's the key here in this review that I have to really hammer home. This thing is performance oriented. So that means that you're going to get that saturation of your internet speeds, you're going to get the wireless performance, you're going to get the network performance that you would expect out of something like this. It's not cheap for a reason, because it's quality. I don't like when I buy something and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, why am I noticing slowdowns? Why is this my bottleneck? It shouldn't be. The service should be my bottleneck. The thing I'm paying for connecting to the internet, FiOS, is my bottleneck, as it should be. If your router is your bottleneck, get rid of your router and upgrade to something like this. Let's take a step back again, get a little worked up. I don't want to get too worked up. And I will reiterate what I just said. This is not for everybody, right? If you're not a gamer and you're not really concerned about your internet speeds, and there's a lot of people out there, right? A lot of people are not savvy. A lot of people don't have gigabit service. If you've got, slower internet, like 300 megabits or less, most of the regular consumer routers will work just fine. If you're having signal problems, sure, you can get a cheaper mesh network. But something like this is really targeting the network of, many, many devices. Like, 20 plus devices, gamers, low latency, easily expanding the actual network in your house with, newer base stations and such. So this is targeting a different class of consumer. This is not targeting the mom and pop, the people that just, get internet and they're just browsing, doing, minimal things. This is for the more upper end, the higher tier, the gamers, the people that need fast internet access. If you're one of those people, this thing's for you. ASE Labs and ASE Publishing would like to thank D-Link for sending these products for review. You can check out links in this review below and on ASE Labs to purchase this product right now. For ASE Labs and ASE Publishing, I'm Aaron Schatz, and thank you for watching. And yes, I know it's been a while since I actually posted a review. A lot of things going on, right? We got coronaviruses everywhere. Everybody doesn't want to, shake hands anymore. We're all, in quarantine. It's just a really mess. So, of course, I'm going to say stay safe out there. You know what? Why don't you catch up on our past reviews? We've got a lot of them. You can actually check it out. click our channel right here, and why don't you hit that subscribe button. You'll be informed of everything as we post them. And I know you have enough time right now because you're pretty much locked indoors. Everything is going to be closed. I have no idea when this is going to end, and I think it's insanity. I don't understand why people are buying so much toilet paper, but who knows? It's going to be like this for at least a few weeks, hopefully less, because this is absolutely insane. But it's a good time. Really catch up on the things that you want, like watching more reviews. Click the link. You'll be informed of everything for the subscribe button. And then check out all the other reviews. You know what? I'm going to say this. If you don't have the time to watch this, but I mean, what else are you doing right now? We have 1-minute reviews. In fact, if you check out the description below, you will see the 1-minute review of this review. We basically take this entire review and force it into 1 minute. And yes, that 1 minute is surely not enough time to cover everything. That's why you have to come back and watch these really in-depth reviews. And we hope you enjoy them. Please leave us some feedback. Stay safe out there, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.